So do you want to know why Donald Trump and the U.S. military are invading Venezuela? Do you want to know the truth? Well, I'm here to tell you the truth. I'm Michael Schaefer with the Rebel Alliance podcast, and today we're going to get past all the rhetoric and BS, and we're going to tell you the truth for once. So, I have some notes here. I'm just going to look at my notes and try to do kind of freewheel this one. In a nutshell, Venezuela and the United States have been in conflict over oil since before 1976, when I was, I would have been 6-7 years old. Little did little Michael know, running around, that the seeds of this war were being sown back then. It boils down to this. Back in the early 70s, American companies helped build the infrastructure in Venezuela. And we helped build their oil industry. And one of the deals that we worked out with Venezuela when we were doing this was that we would retain ownership of the oil, but we would pay a fee to Venezuela for that. And I guess at the time, Venezuela, that was a good deal for them because, they didn't really have a way of getting the oil themselves, and these big American companies came in with all their heavy industry, and pretty soon money started to flow, and that was a good deal. But it didn't take long for Venezuela to realize, hey man, that oil that's under the ground here, that belongs to us. That's our oil. And thank you for helping us, but we'd like to work out some kind of other deal. And it turns out that the largest pool of oil on planet Earth is under Venezuela. The largest reserve on Earth is in Venezuela. So once everybody figured that out, Venezuela started to become way more important, okay? So I guess in 1976, Venezuela got wise, and they nationalized their oil industry. What that means is basically the government took it over, and the revenue that the oil industry created became the government's revenue. And however you feel about that, I'm not going to judge. It's one way to do it. That's one of the things that people in America fear when we talk about socialism, and they fear that the government's going to take over some of these industries. But in Venezuela, that's what they wanted to do. And it was under President Carlos Andre Perez. And it was during this time that they formed PDVSA, which was an oil company owned by the state. And foreign oil companies, like ours, lost ownership of these resources. But they were compensated. And whether or not you agree with, were they undervalued, whatever, we're going to get into that in a minute, okay? Because that's where a lot of the disagreement lies. But so they were compensated, and many of these companies continued operating service contracts and joint ventures. So they were still making some money from the oil industry in Venezuela. This nationalization is widely recognized as legal under international law and did not immediately trigger any major U.S. retaliation. So for decades afterwards, U.S. and Venezuela oil trade continued normally. All right. Well, then comes Hugo Chavez in 1999. And look, what happened here is pretty easy to understand. The money that started coming into Venezuela was skyrocketing because, again, they found out that they had this huge oil reserve, and they started getting a little uppity. All right. Hugo Chavez specifically got elected on this idea of national pride and nationalism. And he reasserted state control over the PDVSA. He increased royalties and taxes on foreign firms. And he rewrote contracts to give the Venezuelan state majority ownership over everything. And it was in 2007 when Venezuela renationalized key oil projects in the Orinoco Belt. I don't know if I pronounced that right. And this is where asset seizures occurred. Several U.S. companies refused new terms and were expropriated, kicked out. Sorry, it's early. I haven't had my coffee. Give me a break. So the two companies that got a little butthurt here is ExxonMobil and ConocoPhillips. Okay, pay attention to that because they come back later. So Venezuela seized the physical assets, argued that it had the sovereign right to do so, it was their land, and offered compensation it believed was fair to ExxonMobil and ConocoPhillips. These companies, though, disagreed on the valuation and took Venezuela to court, international arbitration. The outcome of the international arbitration was that Venezuela was ordered to pay billions in compensation. Some payments were made, but some of those payments have not been made and remain disputed or unresolved. So yeah, U.S.-owned assets were seized by Venezuela. Nobody can test that. But the dispute is over the compensation. How much money should ExxonMobil and ConocoPhillips have gotten when the expropriation happened? Expropriation. I guess that's a word. So they're disagreeing about how much their used oil assets were worth. Okay? Keep that in mind, because this is going to become important when we talk about killing people over this. All right? So then Maduro gets elected around 2013. And this conflict deepened. Again, what this is Venezuelan pride, national pride, and potentially some crooks and some people skimming money into their own pockets. So there's definitely accusations of that. All right? So when Maduro came in and started making, more bold claims like, "Hey, you're never getting that money back. Sorry, we offered you a deal. You said no. Tough cookies." Well, in 2013, the United States imposed sweeping sanctions on Venezuela, and we restricted their access to global financial systems. We sanctioned PDVSA, and we froze Venezuelan assets abroad. Okay, so it's probably those evil Republicans again, right? Well, the Republicans had Congress. So yeah, in a sense, it was. But who was president in 2013? That was our friend, Mr. Barack Obama. So just showing we can be fair and balanced here on the Rebel Alliance podcast, okay? This was President Barack Obama that signed the executive order to put these sanctions in play, okay? As a result, Venezuela lost the ability to maintain their oil infrastructure. Oil production collapses, and they entered economic freefall. And as a result, oil was basically geopolitical leverage, just not an economic resource. So we were basically putting pressure on Venezuela to elect different leadership. Okay? We basically said, hey, Venezuela, we're the United States, we're the strong, and we are going to bankrupt if you don't do what we say. All right, so was this theft or was it just nationalization? What would we have done in the United States if that oil was on our land? They're doing the same thing that we would have done, okay? Plain and simple. And from a legal perspective, nationalization is not automatically theft under international law. Nationalization becomes unlawful if there is no public purpose, there is no due process, and there is no compensation. Okay, so the Venezuelans believe that they've done all those things, and therefore the nationalization was legal from their point of view. So the historical record is fairly nuanced here. Venezuela did seize assets from U.S. companies. The U.S. did lose control and profits. The legality depends on the compensation and not really on the ownership by itself. All right. Now, why this matters today. You're going to hear a lot of U.S. leaders talk about taking Venezuelan oil or getting our oil back, tapping into a century-old grievance. U.S. companies once controlled all that oil. Venezuela took it back. And this conflict may never truly be resolved. Now, what's the bottom line? Yes, Venezuela nationalized its oil industry. Yes, it resulted in the seizure of U.S.-owned assets. Yes, compensation was ordered in multiple cases, and in some cases was not paid. No, it was not a simple case of theft. And yes, oil sovereignty is the core reason U.S.-Venezuela relations remain so hostile. All right? Now, who's behind all this? And is it moral to go in there and, 40 people were killed in that strike. That's 40 deaths attributed to the U.S. military already. And there will be more. There's going to be a lot more. What I would say to all of you watching this right now is there is no doubt in my mind that ExxonMobil and ConocoPhillips are in bed with the Trump administration over this issue. They believe they are owed billions of dollars. They were not getting anywhere with the international courts. And now, what have they done to make this happen? I don't know. I don't have that evidence. I would say that it would be really a good thing to start watching the flow of money in and out of those companies and in and out of the Trump family accounts. I'm not saying anything illegal is happening, but I sure would like to know that there's some people that are keeping an eye on that, because this feels really, really fishy. Now, is this immoral? Well, we are killing people over this. Okay? We are killing God's children over this, and we've already talked about that. That's against God's law, and that makes it immoral. And I don't support it. I don't support it. If you're going to open an oil platform in somebody else's land, you're taking some risk. You're taking a certain amount of risk that they're going to nationalize and take that stuff. It's on their property. You can do certain things to try to protect yourself in international courts and with international law, but you are taking a big risk. Do I think it's worth killing people over this? No, I don't. I think ExxonMobil and ConocoPhillips have enough profits. They're doing pretty good. So I believe this whole war is immoral. I believe this whole war is an act of evil. It's about money. It's about oil. And what can we do about it? Well, I'll tell you what I'm going to do about it. And I encourage you to do the same thing. Stop buying oil. I mean, how many wars now in my lifetime have we fought over oil, over access to oil? How many hundreds of thousands of Iraqis are dead because we wanted that oil? We wanted that oil flowing freely. We wanted to put our pressure on those governments to sell to us nicely, all right, and not cause any problems. It's murder. It's like, again, we've covered this. It's murder in our name. They're wearing our flag on their uniforms when they're killing those people for money, for oil. And does any of that money come to us? I mean, even if it did, that'd still be immoral. But this is going into the pockets of the elites and the billionaires. We have to stop making those people more and more powerful. We have to take the power back, the power of the people. Okay? And making billionaires trillionaires is not going to make us freer. I promise you that. So, here's what I do. I bought an EV. Okay? I have not bought a gallon of gasoline. I've not bought a gallon of gasoline in almost 2 years. No, that's not entirely true. I buy 1 gallon every year for the snowblower. I haven't bought an electric snowblower yet, but that's coming. I don't buy gas for my car. And the EVs, first, one thing I will tell you is that if gas was cheaper than electricity, which it could get to that point someday, I still wouldn't go back to a combustion engine. My Rivian is the best vehicle I have ever owned, and it drives so nice, and it's got so much power, and the features on it are so, I mean, it's just wonderful. And the charging experience has gotten way, way better. My vehicle's plugged into my garage into a standard outlet, a level 1 charger. I get about 20 to 30 miles of range per day just plugged into the wall. And that's not great, but I love it. I wouldn't change a thing. And the fact that, you see these evil corporations and the things that they're doing around the world, creating chaos, destabilizing sovereign nations, it's just evil. And I don't want to be a part of it. I don't want to be associated with that. And so I can make a simple choice. I'm going to buy an EV, and I am not going to buy your product anymore. Sorry. I think, there are a lot of people that argue, is climate change real? Well, you know what? It doesn't matter if we have clean air. I live out here in the mountains for a reason. Okay? It's beautiful up here. We have clean air, clean water. I wouldn't trade that for anything. Would I live down in Denver or Dallas or any of these and drink their water? No way. No chance. No chance. This is perfect. So you guys deserve to have this kind of air too, and the way you do that is you don't pump exhaust fumes into the air and breathe that every day. Go look at the research on Parkinson's and Alzheimer's and what they think the cause of that is. Okay? So I can make a political statement with my wallet, and I'm not going to buy oil anymore. I'm not going to buy gasoline anymore. And maybe some of these wars will stop. Notice that with oil, if I want to use a car, I've got to get oil and gas out of the ground in my country, but then I've also got to import oil from other countries as well to meet the demand. That gets me involved in all of their politics and everything. With electricity, these are American companies run by Americans who are generating electricity right here in the United States of America. I never have to go anywhere else for my power needs. It's right here, made in America. So you do what you want to do, man. You do you. You do your thing. Okay? But you have an opportunity here to tell the big oil and gas companies where to shove it. So, food for thought, guys. I don't serve evil. I don't serve Satan. I don't think you should either. Make good choices, everybody, and God bless. What's up, puppies? Might be a moose. Let's go see.